Hi, I'm Ronnie Ledrew, and you're watching a podcast where nostalgia comes alive. It's Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. Roll it!
Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive. Since July of 2021, Jake and his friends have interviewed professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and many more. Who will they be chatting with in this week's interview? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. I'm your host, Jake Deffinbaugh. With me today, as always, our co-host Chris Bixby and Matt Bingel with his pal, Morning Monster. How you guys doing?
We're good, Jake.
Hi everybody. Hey folks, how you doing? How you doing, Jakey?
That's great here. I'm doing great. As always, Chris, what do we have for today?
Glad you asked. We're very excited about today's guest. He is one of the hosts of the Puppetry podcast Puppeteers with the lovely Adam Kreutinger. He's done a bunch of other things in the puppetry field, which we'll get into. He also works with our good friend DJ Bob Runkel on his podcast, DJ Bob Show, again, which we'll get into later. And here he is, Cameron Garrity. Cam, happy to have you here.
Hey guys, happy to be here. Really excited to finally meet all of you guys, and I've heard wonderful things from DJ Bob and Taylor Bebot and other friends who've been on the show. So thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So for those who don't know who you are, could you tell our audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. My name's Cameron Garrity. I go by Cam as well. And I am a puppeteer and a graphic designer. I live in Buffalo, New York, and work very closely with Adam Kreutinger, who's an incredible maker and YouTuber and puppeteer. And I'm not sure if I said art teacher, but he's a great art teacher as well. And we've been working together for about 13 years. One of our highlights that we've worked together on has been, as you mentioned, the Puppeteers podcast, where we conduct interviews with in-depth interviews with the world's most passionate puppeteers. And that has been something that, we have had so much fun doing. We're working on bringing it back again later this year. Awesome. And then I also do, as I mentioned, graphic design is my day job. I'm here right now at Damon University in my office, where I'm the associate director of it's a new title. Sorry, I'm going to flub this. I'm the associate director of branding and design. So on our marketing team.
Nice.
Which is a dream, because I went here to Damon as a student. It's where I fell deeper in love with puppetry. So being able to promote the university and get people in the door to come here as students and be a part of it all is really exciting.
Nice.
Nice.
Awesome.
Wonderful to have a fellow podcaster here. Yes. Indeed.
Yes.
Yes. Always.
DJ Bob and now
DJ Bob,
and now you.
So what was your background like, and how did you grow up?
Oh gosh. So I'm born and raised here in Buffalo, New York. For people who are unfamiliar with New York, it's about as far away from New York City as you can get while still being in the same state. And but have always been interested in the arts, have always been interested in the Muppets. So by extension of that, I've always been interested in puppetry, but I didn't really know how far puppetry went beyond the Muppets until I was in high school and college. And but anyway, so I grew up the consummate capital M, capital N Muppet nerd. I kind of thought growing up that if I learned everything there possibly was to know about Jim Henson, and if I knew, the Jim Henson The Works book cover to cover and Sesame Street Unpaved, and memorized all the documentaries, that I'd be ready, that at a moment's notice, the phone would ring and it would be Joan Gans Cooney saying, Cam Garrity, we need you on the set of Sesame Street right now. And I don't know where in my head that delusion came from, but it kept me going, and it got me interested in monitor techniques and a little bit on how to build puppets. But I also was very comfortable with the Folkmanis puppets that you could buy at the store, or the FAO Schwartz Muppet Whatnots. Those were serviceable for a time. And of course, all through this, I also knew that I was really interested in theater and in visual arts as well, which is where the illustration and the graphic design got nurtured. And it was when I finally ended up at Damon. Then it was Damon College. Now it's Damon University. But was when I met some theater professors who really opened up whole new worlds to me when I was there as a student. It got me to visit places like the National Puppetry Conference at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, where I've spent many conferences learning puppetry there. But I also got the opportunity to meet and visit the actual set of Sesame Street when I think I was 20 when I went there. And it shouldn't have taken me that moment walking down the street to realize, like, oh, they're fine here without me. But that's what it took. It was just like, oh, if I ever want to be able to do this or anything like it, I need to make the experiences for myself and with my cohort of people back in Buffalo, because there's not a Cam Garrity shaped hole in the corner that they're waiting for me to fill. And I say all of this, understanding that I was still doing things in puppetry back home. I was doing things at Damon. I was working with Adam already, but it shifted the focus to, okay, you have to do the work yourself, and that was a really helpful and important thing. And it's made me a better artist since then, back in 2011 when that was.
So I'm kind of curious, how did you get into puppetry?
Great question. So I, like I said, puppetry, the Muppets were always the thing that I gravitated to. I just, I was like a kid of the 90s and had, a couple dozen Sesame Street and Muppet Show and Fraggle Rock VHS tapes that I, for whatever reason, found those more entertaining than, anything else that was around at that time. Of course, I enjoyed Barney, and I enjoyed Disney, and I enjoyed Pixar and all those things. But, there was something that had a particular pull about the Muppets. And so the toys that I had around my house were puppets of Bert and Elmo and Oscar and Big Bird. And so my play was puppetry, because my play was influenced by those shows that I was watching. And then I also got my hands on a VHS tape that my parents got me that was a PBS documentary called The World of Jim Henson that was produced, kind of after Jim passed. And so that whole thing, here I am watching some of the same sketches and scenes from movies that I was watching on those other VHS tapes, but here they are pulling the camera back, and I'm seeing, Jim on his back as they made Kermit ride a bike. And I'm figuring out how they got Carol Spinney to see inside Big Bird. And I'm seeing all those things, right? And I found that just as entertaining, if not more, than the rest of the world. So I was, at the same time, I was really loving Grover and Bert and Ernie and Cookie Monster and Big Bird and Kermit. I was also, getting to know and falling in love with Jim Henson and John Stone and Carol Spinney and Frank Oz and all those people. So that's kind of how that all started, and it just, snowballed.
Very nice.
Awesome.
So I'm curious, who were some of your biggest puppetry influences growing up?
Well, Jim Henson was, probably the biggest name, just because his name was on everything, and most of the books that I could find were about him. Those documentaries also acquainted me with people like Kevin Clash, who I found really inspirational, especially because he, like Jim, did a lot of work as a teenager, and it was well documented, the kind of work that he did before he made it big with the Muppets. Steve Whitmire I found really inspiring, and of course Carol Spinney was huge. And now since becoming more formalized in puppetry, and also doing the podcast, having been able to meet both Carol and Deb, I've really gotten to know Deb Spinney well since 2020, as she was on the show. And being able to meet those people. And also Big Bird was hands down my favorite character. You could see some Big Bird merch here in my office, and I'm looking at a Big Bird feather that's on this wall over here. But that just hands down my favorite. So, and we share a birthday, so that always, I felt, connected me to the bird as well.
Oh, wow.
Oh my
that's wonderful.
gosh.
It's little things, but obviously, as I said, when you're growing up with this and you're reading the coffee table books, you start to think about how would the biographers write this kind of stuff. And so I'm saw those common threads as things that had maybe more significance than they really did.
Can you share any of your earliest memories watching puppets?
Oh wow. Yeah, I certainly remember. Again, we're going back to that Jim Henson biography VHS tape. The pigs doing "I Get Around" from the Muppet Show, and then that great sequence that was originally from the documentary of Muppets and Men, where they're showing everybody with their bikes on these giant rigs. And I remember that being that was a moment that stuck in my head. I remember seeing the original drawing for Big Bird is in that special, and John Stone explains the idea of the monitor and those things. And then, like I said, I kind of mentioned that I had toy puppets around all the time. So there was that element of just play as well. And, really, really crappy, toy marionettes that always got tangled. You'd spend more time untangling the marionette than actually performing it. But, one of those big, they used to sell them at, I don't know if it was Spencer's or other kind of stores at the mall in the mid 90s, but these kind of mine was purple, but it was like this long necked monster with 2 feet. It was like 2 feet and a middle body and a long head. And it was like a 4 or 5 string marionette that I had, and was probably taller than me at the time. It's still hanging up in my attic somewhere. But that kind of stuff was just really, these early influences where, when you're a kid, you have people who cars are their identity, right? Or Legos are their thing, or Harry Potter. And for, most of my youth, it was like, oh, Cam does puppetry, so get him whatever kind of puppet things you could find for him.
So now getting into puppeteering professionally, do you remember what your first puppeteering job was?
So the first real gig that I had, I would do birthday parties and stuff for family members and other small things like that. Would maybe get $10 or $20 thrown at me afterwards. My sister would also help with those sometimes, being a second puppeteer. But the first real thing that we did on a set was for this I had an internship through Damon with a company called IBC Digital. I'm not too sure if they're how active they are still, but at the time they had done work mostly as an animation company. They animated the Kid Cuisine Penguin was one of their big claims to fame. They had done some
wow.
insert work
Wow.
for Sesame Street and a show called Choo Choo Soul.
Yeah. Oh my God.
yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
That's
I
awesome.
don't know it very well. I don't know
Oh,
exactly
yeah.
what parts of the show they animated, but like so it's this kind of animation house that would pick up these freelance projects, right? So they also had done like one shot in the third Harry Potter movie. So like
Oh,
you know,
wow.
it's just this place that was doing all these different things, and they were based in Buffalo, and they had this partnership with Damon University. And when they found out that I was interested in puppetry, they said, well, that's kind of like animation. And so they said, well, we'll bring him on for an internship. And so we through the process of working together, they hooked us up with the local antique store. It was called Just Lookin' Antiques, and they wanted to shoot a series of commercials that would play on YouTube and in the store. They were going to install these like big screen, flat screen TVs and hang them from different parts of the store and just play these spots on repeat. So we shot 3 commercials. We didn't do any of it with monitors. It's some of the, I'm sure if you look for it, you could still find it. But Adam and I have tried very hard to kind of not make it go away, but it's very early work. So it looks like stuff that was done by a bunch of 20-year-olds who didn't have monitors and didn't know what we were doing. And but it was great, you know, on the job. You know, it was trial by fire. It was, you know, how do you manage a set with X number of puppeteers, but twice the number of puppets, and how are you in charge of wrangling, and how do you work with a camera team that's never worked with puppets before? And it was a very formative experience. It was also very formative because I'll never forget. We shot those right before I went to the O'Neill for the first time. And so when I was there at the O'Neill, I received a rough cut of one of the commercials. And I was really excited because it was, you know, I was on cloud 9 because at the time I didn't know any better. And I'm just, these are puppets that Adam and I built, and they're in a thing, they're in a commercial, and it looks and sort of feels like, you know, what I've always wanted to do. And I showed it. I was sitting at a table with Marty Robinson and Robert Smythe, who's another puppeteer, an amazing writer. And I showed it to both of them, and they kind of looked at it, and they watched the 30 seconds, and they said, huh, no monitors, huh? And it was such a humbling thing. And then they talked to me about, you know, if you're on a set and they don't give you monitors, you don't work, and you don't put puppets up in the air until they bring you that, because that's the only tool you have to make sure that your characters look good. And it was just a wonderfully humbling moment. But it was that thing again of like, okay, right, you have to, like, it's exciting, yes, but it's also work, and it's work that people will see. Like, you could go to this Just Lookin' Antique store, and I think they still play these commercials that are now like 10, 11 years old, right? So and if that's here, this is one of the soapboxes that I like to get on, is like, if that's the only puppetry that people are seeing, then in a way that is almost a disservice sometimes to the art form, because when you hear someone singing badly, there's so much, people sing all the time, right? You sing in your car, you sing in the shower, you hear singing on the radio, you know, you have a barometer for what is really great singing, what's mediocre singing, and what's bad singing. People don't have that kind of barometer with puppetry. They know what really great puppetry looks like, but then when they see a dumb 20-year-old who puts a commercial together, they don't necessarily know how low on the spectrum that is. And so that's a real responsibility. I feel like we almost need more of the kind of puppetry that is low and middling, so we could better appreciate when we see something like the Muppets or Crash and Bernstein, or I don't know why that was the note, but I know Tim through the through the O'Neill. But so these wonderful examples of Don Quixote or the Helpsters.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So that you could really appreciate that when you see it, as opposed to someone just thinking like, oh, all I need to do is put a puppet on my hand, and now I am a puppeteer as great as Dave Goals. So that was a long rambling answer to what was your early work, but it's just, again, it's a soapbox that I get on.
It's all good. Very true. Yes, very true as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's more than just, oh, here it is. You apologize.
Right, yeah.
No.
Right.
It's
There's
more
a
than that
lot more
whatsoever.
that goes into us, people. A lot more.
That's right. That's right.
Yes, indeed. So since you kind of brought this up earlier, since 2012, you've had the great pleasure of participating in the National Puppetry Conference at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center.
It's a wonderful, I can't speak highly enough to the program there that Pam Arciero and Jean-Marie Keevens as. Okay, yeah. So Pam is
so awesome.
She's wonderful, and she's
absolutely.
she's the artistic director for the Puppetry Conference. Jean-Marie Keevens, the associate artistic director. I mean, I could spend the rest of our time together just listing all of the amazing people who I've met through there. We already mentioned Taylor Bebot, and it's hard to describe. I'll never forget. So my second year was Adam's first year at the conference, and we drove down together, and I explained to him all the things that he was going to see and what the experiences were going to kind of be like, and trying to explain to him what he's going to expect. But it's also without going through it and being a part of it, it's hard to envision what someone who's been through it is talking about. And I'll never forget then on our drive back, the very first thing he said to me when we got in the car was, I didn't understand why you'd be right, but you were totally right about everything you said. And so I say that to kind of preface this with, it's some of this might sound slightly foreign or bizarre, but the O'Neill is such a wonderful experience to learn that you're not alone as a puppeteer. So many people, there's a lot of people who come in from New York or Chicago or LA, but a lot of people are coming from the middle of Mississippi or Michigan or Ohio or all these different places where they're the only puppeteer in their town or their city. And I'm so lucky to have Adam, but otherwise we would both be kind of like, there's aren't that many puppeteers in Buffalo. And so to be able to go to a place and be in community where you could just have conversations about arm rods or what the best kind of black clothing to wear on stage is, or the most comfortable kind of rolly to bring with you onto set, or to show someone a commercial and their first reaction is no monitors, huh? So that alone is worth its weight. Just like I said, just the community of people who are there, but then it's tremendously hard work. It's from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. You're doing puppet stuff, and you're refining techniques, and you're putting on your own shows, and you're helping other people see their art through. There's 60 to 70 puppet shows that get produced in those 10 days, and you try to soak up of as much of it as you can and to learn from as many people as you can. And I learn new things every time I go back. Adam and I just went down. We weren't able to go and be a part of the conferences this year, but we drove down just to see the final performances and just to soak up those last 2.5 days of what people had learned and what shows had been produced. Was it just was energizing. So I recommend to anyone, if they're able to apply and to bring their art to the O'Neill and work together with some of the best.
Definitely.
Yes.
So speaking of the O'Neill, throughout your time there, you developed a performance titled Sanity Intact. Can you talk a bit about what that is and how you created it?
Yeah. So, one of the other things, it's one of those, everyone contains multitudes, right? So at the same time that I was the puppet kid and the artist growing up, I also spent a lot of time, I was chronically ill. I was in and out of hospitals and doctor's appointments and, going in for surgery and living this life that was very othered by way of, I didn't have other people at my school who knew what that experience was necessarily like of going through all this. And Sanity Intact was my way of initially helping other people like me to learn from some of the skills that I had built up as a patient. Things of like, what do you pack when you're going in for surgery? Like what's in your backpack? And
Exactly.
And how should I plan my meals the day before when I'm not going to be able to then eat the day of? And so it was at first these sort of like comedy takes of how to prepare and building, like I said, building resources for other people who are chronically ill. But in 2016, when I went to the O'Neill as an emerging artist and got to spend the whole week working with a resident company and building sort of a longer version of the show, realized that it was more important to actually tell my story and my pediatrician story of how do we get this kid healthy before he turns 18 and I'm not able to take care of him anymore because he has to go to the adult doctors. And it being able to tell my story in its specificity was able to not only talk to other patients like me, but hopefully also resonate with anybody who's had a hospital experience, whether they're doctors and staff in a hospital, whether they're caretakers for people who have to go in routinely for procedures. And it was a very fulfilling process of being able to kind of work through some of that stuff with art and hopefully be able to shed light for the audience on how to be more empathetic and how to help people feel like they're a little less alone when they're going through those processes.
In 2013, you created your own puppetry festival called the Geppetto Festival. How did that come about, and how does that come into play?
Yeah, so I mentioned my day job as a graphic designer, and so when I was studying at Damon, I was a graphic design major. My minor was in theater, where I was focusing on puppetry and writing. And I had received what they call a think tank grant as a student that allowed me X number of dollars to it allowed me to go and attend my first O'Neill conference. And it also gave us, there was extra money in a sort of like use it or lose it kind of fund. And I knew as I prepared for my senior year, that I needed to create for my each senior in the graphic design program had to come up with a capstone project. So some people will write and design a children's book. Some people put a website together that is all about they might say I want to revamp the DARE program for elementary and middle school kids, and it really depends on what you're passionate about. And so I thought, okay, well, how do I was sort of challenged to combine the theater with the puppetry with the graphic design. So I said, well, okay, what as a puppeteer do I wish that I had? What kind of resource? And I said, okay, well, let's create the ultimate resource for puppeteers. And that became this idea of the Geppetto project, which was resources, kind of like imagine the Muppet Wiki, but it's all not just Muppet stuff and Jim Henson stuff, but all puppetry. So it's that plus like just endless photo galleries, plus like a version of Netflix that just had puppet content. And because we had this money that I had to spend, what if we also did these pop-up festivals where, and the whole idea was bringing new life to puppetry and bringing new audiences in to see puppetry. So I said, well, what if, Buffalo doesn't have a huge puppetry community? Let's pay to bring artists in to town, and we'll invite everybody, and they get to see what these different puppet artists have to offer. And we'll put on a show, and we'll do they'll host seminars, and they'll talk about their work, and just be this really exciting day of puppetry. So that's how that was able to be born. And we were able to bring in, I can't remember if it was 6 or 7 puppeteers from out of town who all came in. They were all people I met at my first O'Neill in 2012. And so we had people like Christine Dempsey, Matt Laird, Broderick Jones, Leah Ghaznavi, Honey Goodenough. I'm sure I'm forgetting someone else, and I'm so sorry that I am. But we had those people come in and perform, and it was just this really wonderful day. And then we were able to do it again. Damon enjoyed the event so much that they said, like, let's keep this going. And we did it another time in 2015, which was bigger and better. And Adam had a wonderful, we put all his puppets up on display in our art gallery and had new and different guests come in as puppeteers. And it's truly a highlight of some of the work that I've done in puppetry. It was really a boon for the Buffalo arts and theater community. And it's something, again, that Adam and I have been kicking around of how could we do this again? Because our big thing is we want to make sure that I don't care if I ever make a dollar from producing Geppetto, but I want to make sure that our artists don't have to pay to come to Buffalo. And right. I don't want the audiences to have to pay for admission. That was part of it, that the day was free for people to come in and see all these things and be enriched. So finding a way to do that, especially in 2023, is expensive. And Damon was wonderful to underwrite it twice, but we need to find other people to be able to make that happen. So that's just the need for money has kept us from being able to do it more. But hopefully people are watching this and are getting excited by the problem that I've presented here. And there's a blank check in the mail. They could send it to Damon University and I will figure it out.
So aside from performing puppets, you also teach puppetry in various venues. What's that like?
It's wonderful. I mean, it's like I said, I think just more people need to be exposed to this world and to see different ways of doing it and to start thinking again in the same way that, like, you know, I could sit at a desk and sort of tap my toes and hum a little song. Like, I think more people need to just be sitting at their desk and thinking about, well, what story could I tell with the pencil that's in my hand? And, you know, if I move it this way, now does it look sad? And if I move it this way, now it kind of looks happy and excited. And being able to teach that visual vocabulary to new people, whether or not they're 6 years old or 16 years old or 60 years old, it's really invigorating to see those gears start to click. And again, for people to be able to walk away and just have some barometer for this and a deeper appreciation. So, you know, even when they see, you know, I'm trying to think of some popular puppets right now that are used even in advertising, but just for someone to look at that and be like, oh, there's a guy sewn into that couch, or there's someone, you know, in a really uncomfortable position, but they're making it work. And it's exciting, and it's, you know, so I love doing that kind of stuff and being able to also, you know, show kinds of puppetry that aren't just the Muppet style that I was exposed to as a kid, but being able to open up different worlds to tabletop and object puppetry and some toy theater and other things like that too.
Nice. So
Awesome.
nice. So we talked about it a lot earlier, but of course now you co-host Puppeteers podcast with Adam Kreutinger. How did the two of you kind of come together to start that?
How do we come together in general or specifically for the podcast?
Well, yeah. Like how I guess we could start by saying, like, how did the two of you kind of like meet?
Sure. So we met.
The podcast, yeah.
Yeah. So we met. We were both in college. All roads for me basically lead back to Damon. So a friend of mine who was a student at Damon knew Adam. They were in a play together at a local theater. She was the assistant stage manager, had some role behind the scenes, and she and I were very close. She obviously knew that I was into puppets and all this kind of this whole world. And the show was an Evil Dead musical. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Evil Dead, but there's all sorts of crazy props and a talking moose head and different you know, puppety things that need to happen. So in the show, we're Adam and our other buddy Zach Halmister. We're all in this, and she just said, you guys gotta meet up. So like you do, we followed each other on Facebook, and it took a couple months for us to finally meet in person, but we met and hit it off. And Adam was already, you know, he had background as a costume maker and a mascot designer, and had just an incredible background in the making of things. And I had this background that I was developing as being interested in the design, in the storyboarding, the writing, and of course I was always performing, but I didn't have any of that building skill. So it very quickly felt like, you know, these two pieces sort of completing each other. And at that time, Adam was also partly because Zach and I were such big Muppet fans that we just wanted him to, like, oh, please make a Kermit, or oh, please make a Gonzo or a Fozzie or whatever. and Adam was doing that, which was teaching him how to, learn all these different patterns and skills that he's then taken on to make all of these wonderful things that he's made. But so I was also providing him with, because I just had gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes of reference photos that he was able to use. And like, oh, you need a photo of like what Elmo's footprint looks like? Let me send that right over to you, bud. So I was that kind of resource for him too at the beginning. But no, we got along really well, always having these creative sort of spats and arguments, but knowing that like at the end of the day, we were doing good work. And at the time I was working on this show at Damon called Something That I'm Supposed to Be. And it was sort of a mythologized version of the last months of Jim Henson's life, which included Michael Eisner and Mickey Mouse being bad guy villains. And I had already built my own sort of chintzy version of Kermit and Ernie and Boober and Cookie Monster, but I needed a Mickey puppet. And so Adam built that out of the kindness of his own heart and wallet, and really helped round out that show, because I couldn't have done it without this Mickey puppet. And so that was kind of our first collaboration, and that quickly then turned into, like I said, the Just Looking stuff. We worked on all sorts of we were doing a lot of YouTube stuff early days, and then we've worked on local commercials and theater pieces and all this. So all of that had been happening for a number of years. This is where I transitioned into the Puppeteers part of things. And we had been to the O'Neill a bunch of times together. We knew all these great puppet people, but we were also at a point where he was building a family. We weren't both in college anymore, so we needed to be more diligent of like, how do we work in our creation process into our schedules and work lives, and like make something that is consistent, where we don't need to just like be having, because when you're making a theater show, we were spending a year or two on that, trying to figure out what are the sets going to look like, what's the story going to be, all this stuff. Even with the commercials, it was just these long, arduous processes of meetings and script revisions and storyboards and all that. And we said, like, we just got to come up with something that we can do on a regular basis that has some kind of routine to it. And so we were looking into, what does a YouTube series look like? We started kicking around the idea of what does bringing on some of the Puppeteers that we know, what does that look like? And it kind of went from something more performance driven to, well, what if we talk to these Puppeteers about their experiences? And Adam was really, really adamant that it was not a formal interview show. I think I wanted it to be more of that in the beginning, because I was a huge fan of the Mark Maron podcast and Terry Gross and NPR and like all these really wonderful interviewers. And this is where, and I think this is part of why Puppeteers has been so successful, is that it is truly mine and Adam's differing perspectives and point of views coming in at the same time, while also being able to shed a light on these incredible Puppeteers. And I think, what you guys do is wonderful in talking with people in the industry, and you're super knowledgeable about what these folks are up against. But we've all seen the really crummy interviews where someone's talking to, we haven't had Frank Oz on our show, but someone's talking to Frank Oz, and like they haven't done any of their homework.
Oh god.
And they just and
There's
they
nothing
get
worse, honestly.
eviscerated.
We've seen
But it's
those,
also
yeah.
like,
Mhm.
what a waste of the audience's time, what a waste of Frank's time,
Right?
and that happens to everybody. So we
Uh-huh.
felt like we were creating this the space for puppeteers to come in where they're talking to other puppeteers, so we could have very deliberate conversations, and it became this like shop talk. And that's what Adam really wanted it to be, was people coming in, sort of sitting down at our table, and let's just talk about stuff. And of course we kind of go through people's careers and the ups and downs, but like we really just want to hear about like, okay, yeah, working on this movie was really great, but like tell us what went wrong, tell us your puppeteer stories.
Right, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that phrase comes back to Jim Krupa, who's a mentor of both of ours that we know from the O'Neill. He's an incredible performer, but also has made a name for himself in the world of puppet building and mech design.
Absolutely.
And he always says that, and this is where we got the name, was that he always talked about when we'd take his class at the O'Neill, that he wanted to write a book, and it was going to be called Puppeteers, about all the misadventures that he had. And so when Adam and I were in his shop arguing about what was it going to be and what kind of, like, talk me through the show, what would the show be like, and Adam said, like, no, I just want to talk to puppeteers about what's going wrong in their lives. And yes, we'll talk about the good stuff, but I want to know about the bad stuff too. And I said to him, well, it sounds like what you're talking about is a Puppeteers podcast. And he knew exactly what I meant, because we'd been to the O'Neill a dozen times. And he said, yeah, that's exactly what it should be. And we immediately got Jim Krupa on the phone and said, hey, we're thinking of this. Is it okay if we borrow the name from you? And also, would you be our first guest? And we knew if those two things wouldn't happen, if he wouldn't be the first person we talked to on the show, and that he didn't give the blessing of using that name, that we would do something else. But Jim was totally on board, and he's I think we've had him on 4 times now as a guest.
Wow.
And we kind of bring him back every year, and it's wonderful, and it's taken on such a life, and we've both grown dramatically since this process. Adam I think Adam was married already by the time we started the show, but he's become a father twice over, and
yes,
God knows all the things that come and change in your life over 5 years. And it's been a wonderfully fulfilling process.
So I'm kind of curious, who are some of your favorite guests you had on Puppeteers?
Oh man, I mean, you guys know, it's when you have a show, everyone brings their own unique point of views, and it's hard to say like, oh, I like this person more than that person, or whatever.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Moments that
we definitely have that. So.
Yeah,
sure.
You're not alone.
And you're also like, oh no, I definitely like this person more than that, right?
Yeah.
No, but
some more than others.
Yeah. Like Cameron Garrity, never invite him back on. No, but no, I mean, so the person who I always kind of point to first is, we had Deb Spinney on. And again, Carol and Big Bird were just so a part of my upbringing, as that to be able to spend any time with Deb and have her talk about Carol was really impactful, and just something I'll never forget. We had on Bart Rockaburton, who has run the Yukon puppet arts program since the early 90s, and also was one of the founders of the puppetry conference at the O'Neill. He's an incredible, talk about like the puppeteers who stand on his shoulders are countless, and he's just such a wonderful, kind person. And we told him then, and we need to have him on again, because there have been 80 some odd 84 85 episodes of Puppeteers at this point. We could have talked to just Bart for every single one of those episodes and not run out of things to talk to him about, between the people that he's taught, the people who have taught him, and just what he knows. Just an incredible font of knowledge. So speaking to him and being able to share his story was really, really great. And then, there are the folks that, are just friends of ours too. Bart, I know from in person at the O'Neill, but it's sort of a teacher student kind of thing. But, to be able to have someone like John Little, who's just, our big brother, or John Cody, who we know from the O'Neill, and just to be able to also talk to your contemporaries and kind of see these people as they come up. Jake Bizzell, who starred in and helped to write the Winnie the Pooh musical that was just off Broadway.
Yes.
And he came in to do one of our 48-hour films. He's come for the Geppetto Festival. He's just come to Buffalo to visit from time to time. Jakey is a dear friend, one of the best. So to be able to just have him on and talk with him for an hour and a half, there's nothing like it. So I know I said a lot of names there, but it's really hard to pick. And there are moments that stick out from just about everybody we've had on. And it's like, there's so many times I wish I could shout into a void and contact my 1999-year-old self, not year-old, but my past self from 1999, and say, you're gonna know these people, and you're gonna work with them, and they're gonna come on your show, whatever that means, but you're gonna talk with them for this amount of time. I just wish that could happen, because I think I'd be a lot more confident in myself, or I would have been more confident in myself sooner. I'll say that, knowing that is a thing, and that those are relationships that I get to continue to nurture with these amazing artists.
Definitely.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way, except just 5 years ago. It's if you told me 5 years ago you'd do a podcast and you'd meet all these people, we've had some amazing people on too, who have been previous guests of yours as well, Carmen Osbar, Leslie Carrera Rudolph. God, help me out, Chris. There's so many names we've had.
Oh yeah,
many.
you guys have had over 100 guests. I mean,
we've had Pam and Marty.
Pam and Marty. Yep.
Yeah.
Ryan Dillon we had on too. He was amazing. Who else? Bradley Freeman Jr. and Chris Thomas.
Bradley Freeman, yep,
we had them on too. Yep.
Yeah.
So many. It's just to think you'd get to know these people who you grew up watching on TV, like Sesame Street and the Muppets. Is just
surreal.
What? It is. It's so surreal.
Yeah. And to also just know them as people.
Yeah.
Right? That's a really important thing, I think, as well, too. To just know, things about them, what their drink order is, or just oh, you that's what your handwriting looks like, and just things that about the people in real life is and just to kind of get them they're still on a pedestal, but to be able to just know them and respect them and appreciate them the same way you would the other people who have important roles in your life is really something special.
Yes, absolutely. There's one story I was gonna bring up. Speaking of Puppeteers, it was the episode with Calvin Lester and Kelsey Brady, also previous guests. Yes,
Yes.
Actually, Calvin's a 2-time. Yep.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
you have this Big Bird puppet. You mentioned Big Bird earlier. You
Mhm.
take this Big Bird puppet to hospitals. In fact, I think it was one of your posts. I think it was on Instagram I saw recently with your Big Bird or
Yeah.
at some hospital. I think it was.
Yeah.
And I remember during that particular episode, you told a story of one time a med student that chased you down the hall trying to figure out how
That's
the
right.
beak worked. Yeah. You
That's
literally
funny.
as medium
was-
bird had to
Mhm.
tell the attendee like you need your med student because like that was completely unacceptable.
Yeah.
Like, but like just chasing it down the hall.
That was something else.
Huh.
Yeah, and fortunately, knock on wood, that has only happened the once. And usually, like, the worst thing I have to say about an experience when I go and visit as medium bird or Dr. Bird is that people like hug them too hard, and the costume kind of like comes down on me harder than I was expecting. But like, you can't get mad if someone's hugging Big Bird too hard.
Yeah, of
Right.
course.
But yeah, those are incredibly fulfilling experiences. Again, going back to my upbringing and being in and out of the hospitals a lot as a kid. I was typically a big kid at the hospitals, or I was there more in my mid to late teens. So when Clifford or Blue from Blue's Clues or whoever the costume character would come through and say like, "Hey, do you want to visit or do you want a picture?" I didn't really need it. I remember, joking with my mom, like, call us back when Grover's here, that kind of thing. So to be able to be that now, for kids is, it's that principle of like, be the adult that you needed as a kid. And to be able to, like, I feel that so viscerally when I visit. And my favorite kids to visit when I'm at those hospitals are the people who are like 15, 16, 17, because oftentimes, their families will be like, "Oh no, that's okay, we don't need to," and I'll kind of pop around and be like, "Are you sure? I'm happy to talk to you," and and we just like have a little chat, and it really does, brighten your day. I don't know if it's been a while since I listened back to that episode with the bird call folks, but there was a time once where I walked into this room and there was a younger kid that he was probably 14 or so. And, I said, "Hi, it's so good to see you," and whatever. And he looks me up and down and he says, "You're not Matt Vogel." And I go, "Oh, no, I'm not. I'm Dr. Bird." And they say, because that's kind of what we have to call him at the children's hospital. And and they're like, "And you're not Carol Spinney either." This is when Carol was still alive. I was like, no, I'm just Dr. Bird. Whatever it was. And the parent kind of, comes up close to, I see through a necktie, like the Sesame Street Live type characters. And the parent kind of whispers like, "Oh, sorry about this. He knows everything about the people behind the scenes." And I whispered back to the parent, like, "Don't worry, I was that kid too. Good luck to both of you," kind of thing. Cause it's just, it was such a funny moment. The kid was so unabashedly like, you're talking and you kind of sound like my guys, but I know you're not. I know you're not Matt. I know you're not Carol. And it was just such a funny experience. But I love doing that. I got to the point where I was going every month to our children's hospital here in Buffalo, and the pandemic, of course, kind of put a damper on that.
Mhm.
I was able to do a couple like sort of Skype calls, but also like getting into that costume is a lot. So to even like get into it, and then you need another person to like help you finagle the camera and all that. So but and this is part of why that I posted the photo you guys were talking about that you saw earlier this week, is that they have just started bringing costume characters back to the hospital and letting them in. So I'm back on the roster, and I'm working with the child life department now to continue to do that. And I can't wait to get back.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. It's like I said, it's some of my favorite work to do. And I realize, I'm sure there are people on here, you know, you've had, and like I said, I know people who do those characters for real. And you know, I've gotten questions from other puppeteers who've said, you know, why aren't you doing your own original characters? And I've said, you know, in this instance, me dressing up and doing Big Bird I look at it as a cosplay, and I look at it as the same way that like someone dresses up like Superman and you know, and walks around and talks to people. And God knows this isn't gonna convince anyone as Superman anytime soon. But to be able to see, you know, as it is, there are some kids who are freaked out by how big the costume is. So if I'm a big costume that they also don't recognize, that could be so scary. So, you know, to be something that is familiar to them is just like that makes a huge difference in just being able to sort of cut to the chase and be able to have my 4 or 5 minutes with them and their family. And you know, I could only hope that people who might raise an eyebrow at what or how I do this can understand that it's done from a place of love and tremendous respect for the characters. So I just want to put that out there, because I'm sure there are people watching like, what is this guy doing? Like,
Right.
really? Who does he think he is? Dr. Bird? Are you? Please.
He's not Matt Vogel. What are you talking about?
and I'm not. And you know,
not.
But you know, to be able to do this little bit, like I said, it's how I'm able to cosplay and bring a little sunshine to people on some of their cloudiest days.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. We're very happy that you're able to start that back up again, because like you
Me
said,
too.
the pandemic just kind of put a hold on everything, and you know, people kind of need that kind of thing in their lives. You know, it really creates something special. Even if you're not Matt Vogel. Like,
That's right.
Yeah, but hey, as long as
You're not Matt Vogel.
You yourself, you're bringing magic to those kids who need it, and it's just wonderful. Absolutely. So speaking of Adam Kreutinger, you got to direct the pilot for his web series, Arlo's Art Show. For those who don't know what that is, could you kind of describe what that show's about and what it was like working on the pilot?
Yeah. So Adam, as I mentioned, is an art teacher, and when he was going for his MFA at Buffalo State University, his capstone project was sort of a version of the original experiment of can Sesame Street can television be used to teach? And he kind of put that on his head and said, you know, can we use television and in this kind of video medium to amplify kids' want and drive to create and to make art, and to make art in a way where it's okay if they make mistakes. I love this about Adam. His rule in his art class is he doesn't have any erasers in his art room, because he doesn't want his students to be thinking about, oh, this isn't good, I have to erase this. It's okay if you make the wrong stroke, and how do you adjust around it? And it also gets you thinking, how can I more intentionally put pencil to paper in the first place, right? So it has those two effects. But Arlo's art show came out of that. He had created the Arlo puppet, and he said, I want to create this show that is sort of, it introduces people to the world. And so I don't remember in what point in the development process we kind of said, well, let's make it a late night talk show, like that was sort of the structure around which we could teach people these different things. And Adam, I mean, he put his heart and soul into that whole project. He built a set in his garage that was built into the wall, so it was overhead, and we were able to puppeteer. He built all the puppets, and I just helped storyboard and kind of provide that outside eye, because he was also performing Arlo. So to be able to have that sort of position removed, and again, this was 6-7 years ago now that we did this, so I'm sure any of us would look back at that and be like, that's how you did that. This could have been better or different or whatever. But tremendously proud of Arlo's art show. Adam's still continuing to do kind of segments with Arlo. He's continued to use that character at his school where he teaches. But it was really cool because it had this element of, we told really silly puns and jokes about whatever the art topic of the day was. We did a demonstration with Arlo, and we had, all sorts of wild arms and feet to be able to, do close-ups. And, Arlo was a rod puppet, but you'd cut to a close-up and it'd be live hand and things like that. And then we also interviewed Adam's old art teacher. No, excuse me. It wasn't his old art teacher, but it was an art teacher who he student taught under, and was he's a renowned artist in Niagara Falls, right outside of Buffalo, but is also an art teacher. And we showed how he paints Niagara Falls and does this incredible impasto technique where the paint is like really raised. And so he showed us that technique in a sort of, Mr. Rogers-esque, let's go to the video wall and we'll meet Thomas Paul Asklar. And then when we went back to that, then Arlo did the demonstration and did a version of the craft himself. So like I said, it was a lot of fun. And Adam just posted this recently. We sort of reused the set and those characters and the concept of like a Tonight Show meets Pappy Druitt kind of thing for back in, oh gosh, I don't remember at what point. It was like 2017, 2018. There was going to be an NBC, like America's Got Talent, but just for puppeteers, like a version of the show that Barnaby Dixon won in the UK. They were going to bring it here, and Henson was attached to produce it. And we were in the running to possibly be on the show. And so we brought back those characters to do some really crazy things. And there was I think a chainsaw at one point, and we were doing all sorts of wild, really, really innovative things. Cause the whole idea was that it was going to be, can you do this as in a live performance all one take. And so you could go to Adam's YouTube channel now and see those performances. It was really cool.
That
Nice.
is cool.
Now, kind of moving on from puppetry, you've also taken up writing. How did that come about for you?
That's partly out of necessity. A lot of puppeteers, when they find their own voice and they build their own puppets, you also then need to come up with whatever stories you need or want to that you could use to get people to meet the puppets that you create. So I started writing in it. I mean, I had done a little bit in high school, but really in college was when I started doing things more formally. I had mentioned that I wrote that show about Jim Henson, Something That I'm Supposed to Be. And then there were other sort of devised theater projects that I worked on at Damon. And I was also, Damon had an animation program. When they started it, they didn't have a minor, but I took enough classes that I technically probably have a minor if they allowed that bureaucracy, right, in education. But I took countless storyboarding courses, and focused it all on like storyboarding for television because that's a thing. And through that, it was an incredible education in how to structure scenes, and it's been some of the most valuable resources I've had because almost every project that I've done with Adam since 2013, we've storyboarded and we've put an animatic together so we could look at it and critique it and edit it before we ever go onto set and shoot. And shout out to Robert Smythe, Ronnie Burkett, Liz Hara, and some other wonderful writers who I've been able to work with and get to know through the O'Neill, and have really allowed me to get some solid tools in the tool belt so that you can, as quickly as you can approach a blank page and get something on there. So you're no longer writing, but you're rewriting. That's the sweet spot that I like to be in. And yeah, really exciting. It's not the part of the process that I enjoy the most, because I really do think that the performance is my favorite thing to do, but I feel pretty confident in saying that writing is really one of my strengths. And in my job as a graphic designer, I've also had to be copywriter and speechwriter at various times for other videos and like very boring projects and other things, and again, having those writing tools have been incredibly valuable.
So you also have a few ideas for some Sesame Street sketches. Can you talk a bit about those?
Yeah. So I've visited the set of Sesame Street twice now. The first time was totally just as a like, hey, could I come to set and see what things look like and meet some puppeteers and all that sort of stuff. Second time I went was a little more formal. I had been through the O'Neill a number of times. I had become close with Pam and Martin and Tyler Bunch and some of those folks. And I was there to meet with Joey Mazzarino about the potential of, there weren't any open positions to be on the writing staff, but it was kind of like, putting your hat in the ring, and at least you have some FaceTime and get to meet him. And so I did that. That was in 2015. And I did not know, and anyone out there listening to this, that when you go to a show to maybe write for them, don't write a packet of material about the show that you're potentially going to write for, because should they ever do that thing or any version of it, but they don't hire you, then in theory, like I've got the receipts, right? So to protect themselves from any kind of scrutiny in that way, I handed this binder to Joey Mazzarino that had a lot of work that I had done at Damon, but also had three bits that were potential ideas for Sesame Street. He kindly asked me to take those pages out of the submission binder that I was handing to him, because he was like, I'm sorry, but I can't read them. But they are now on my website because I definitively do not work for Sesame Street, and I wanted people to just see like, oh, he can kind of write in their voices. So I did this was the time of, they were still like really doing parodies, and I was not interviewing, but I was meeting with Joey like a month after The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt came out, and I was obsessed with that first season of the show. So I did a parody called The Unbreakable Prairie Dawn.
Wow.
So it was all about
Nice.
It was all about, because Kimmy Schmidt, that show's about problem solving and, Kimmy trying to find her way in the world. And at the time there was the real push for STEAM. So the whole thing was her finding these obstacles and then having to build simple machines to be able to have the birthday party or whatever. I'm sort of fuzzy on some of those details. But that's if you go to my website, camgarrity.com, you can read a PDF of The Unbreakable Prairie Dawn. And then there was also, and I was really proud of this one, it was a word of the day sketch. So you'll remember for a long time, they did the word on the street, and it was like a celebrity talking, and Elmo or Abby or Cookie Monster would be there. And then like, they would also come in with all these, like, some chickens would show up, or a polar bear or whatever. And so my word was heroic, and it was Grover teaching the word heroic with Stephen Colbert, who at the time was still at the Colbert Report. So he was all about patriotism and, being a man's man and, fighting with swords and being heroic. And so the whole bit was Stephen and Grover talking about the word heroic. It ended with both of them, Grover turning into Super Grover and Stephen Colbert, returning to frame and being Super Stephen in his own big Super Grover costume. And I like, again, I this interview, if I'm imparting anything to anybody, it's like, don't hold your old work on a pedestal, because when you are 10 years removed from it, you're like, oh, that's not very good. And there are definitely things I could still improve on those scripts, but the Colbert and Grover one, like I still stand by that. And the Kimmy Schmidt one, but the Grover and Steven, those are two characters I know very well. And I encourage anyone to read them, unless you work at Sesame Street, in which case don't. But they don't do those sketches anymore anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Very true. Very true. So speaking of 2015, that year and the following year, 2016, you were the MC and host of TEDx Buffalo, writing comedy and songs for the presentations. The TED conferences are intriguing, I must say. But what was it like writing the comedy and songs for those presentations?
It kind of happened in a way by necessity also. So I was working on, I gave a talk at TEDx Buffalo in 2013 on the power of puppetry. And in preparing to present my own TEDx talk, I just became very quick friends with all the people who were running TEDx Buffalo. And I was like, gosh, I'd like to just continue to work with these people. And they needed a graphic designer, and I was a graphic designer. So I said, hey, do you want me to continue? And I could help you guys build social media graphics and all that. And they were very excited about that. So I started working with them quickly in 2013 and 14 for the next conference. But yeah, eventually I got to the point where I was helping to sort of plan the show, and we were saying like, okay, well, this act needs to go before this act because of XYZ, like, you know, all these logistics, and also trying to keep in mind the like the audience, right? You don't want too many talks that are like really fast and funny, and then all your sort of sad and pensive ones are at the end, right? You want to, it's like putting a playlist together. And so because I was already so involved helping putting those playlists together, I was able to kind of see like, okay, well, to get from here to here, we need a little bit of silliness to clean people's palates. And so being able to diagnose that and then just say, okay, I'm going to come out and make these two jokes before I introduce the next person. It was kind of just, it helped in building the show. So it came from a very natural place, as opposed to other years we would have guest hosts come in and they would have a much more limited time to get a feel for the run of show and how do we keep the momentum going all the way through.
Nice.
But it was I keep saying it was a ton of fun. It was a ton of fun. It was a ton of fun. And you know, stand-up comedy is...
keep on saying it.
Yeah.
Until we're done.
Stand-up comedy is something that you know, in another life I would love to be able to pursue. It's not a muscle that I very often get a chance to nurture, but it is something that I find endlessly fascinating. So to be able to play stand up for those two nights in 15 and 16 was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Awesome.
So we talk. This is another thing we talked about earlier, but you also do a lot of graphic design work. What's it like doing that?
It's great. I don't think it would have been until I was a freshman, maybe even a freshman in college, that I would have been able to like specifically look someone in the eye and say that graphic design was on my radar, or that I would have even necessarily known that that was a job. Like, obviously I knew that there were people who were designers, and you know, there were album covers and there were books and there was layout and magazines and all that sort of stuff. But I never really thought of that as like that's a job as an artist that you can have. And when Damon has a phenomenal graphic design program, and when I was coming in, initially I thought I was going to be a teacher. That was kind of what I went to college for, and I wanted to teach either art or math because those were the two subjects I was best in at school. And the more I was taking courses in math, I was like, this ain't it. This is not, I'm not having fun. I'm not enjoying this. I cannot see the next 4 years of this being anything that I want to do. And meanwhile, I'm loving my art studios, and we have this incredible graphic design program. And looking back, I was always making labels for my mix CDs, and I would spend hours and hours and hours on PowerPoint presentations, making them look as like sleek and inviting and engaging as possible. And I ran my high school's literary magazine and laid out 2 like 150-page literary magazines. And so like I was doing the work of a graphic designer. I just didn't know that that's what it was called or what it was. So I fell very comfortably into the program here at Damon, and to be able to this is where I think it connects with puppetry in a really nice way, is that there's something so iconic about both art forms. If most puppets, right, unless you're trying to play with people's expectations. Like if you look at Bert, you look at Ernie, before they even start talking, you kind of get a sense of what their personalities are going to be. And in the same way, I think that marketing materials need to kind of do the same thing. They need to be inviting, and they need to show a character of a brand or a product or a place of business or an educational institution before you ever actually like really read what's on the poster. And so I like being able to do that. I continue to find new ways to love that and to be excited about that. And a lot of designers will work in like a design agency where every day they have different clients and they're doing different things, and that works really great for some people. I love being, and this is what I've done in the 10 years that I've been working professionally as a graphic designer, is being in-house at places. So spending years at a company and being able to go to their staff meetings and to hear, and really absorb the whole culture of the place. And that allows me to influence the design work that I do for that company. And that's in particular what has been so wonderful about being at Damon, is that before I even walked in the door to interview, I already had 4.5 years of knowledge that I was able to bring with me just from my own student and applying experiences and alumni experience.
Nice.
So with graphic design, we mentioned our buddy DJ Bob earlier. You began working on his podcast, the DJ Bob Show, years ago, much like Chris did. Yes, he did. How did you begin working for him?
Oh no, he's here now.
Oh, now? just as I asked the question? Are you kidding?
Hello. Hello.
I kid you not, Bob. First off, hi.
Hey, Bob.
I had just asked the question. The moment I finished asking the question, bam, there he is.
I thought you guys did like that. Wow.
Yeah, I got
like this is your life.
I got cued in.
Hi, Bob.
Oh man,
DJ Bob Runkel, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
The man, the myth.
Hey.
Hello.
Man,
next you're gonna bring in Taylor and Adam. No, so
I wish.
So I was a guest on Bob's show in 2019.
Yeah.
We were going to, Adam and I were going to both be on the show and to talk about Puppeteers, but Adam, his wife was having their first baby. So Adam was not available. So I did that first interview, and Bob and I very quickly hit it off afterwards, just talking about the show and our, like, all the places we overlapped in terms of our pop culture and nostalgia and all the things that we love. And so it didn't take long for us to, just kind of develop this friendship. And then I'm sure, knowing me and knowing Bob probably asked me if I could design for him.
I basically said to you, look, the branding is not where it needs to be. Can you give my friend some pointers to design it started out like that.
Was it that? Okay.
With a template.
And then and I'm sorry that I don't remember the specifics to this, but I think I probably said something like, it would be easier if I just did it for you.
Yep.
And so, yeah, right. And so I did. And so we came up with, a logo that
the logo came later.
Oh, yes. Yes,
you
because I
this-
did give some pointers before I started working with you. I think you needed some just visual consistency. Was that it?
Yeah.
And then we came up with the logo and sort of revamped the whole look. Okay, it's coming back to me now.
And what's interesting about that logo, guys, is that the microphone wasn't there,
Oh,
Mhm.
right?
wow.
Wasn't it
Yeah.
originally just the headphones?
No, the headphones came last. It was the the text first, and
That's
then
right. That's right.
and then you said it needs something more.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, you're a DJ, it's a podcast, microphone. So I found that bass, and then I'm pretty sure, Bob, and I could have this wrong. You probably have the receipts to correct me on this, but I think we said like it needed one more thing,
Yeah.
and then
'cause
putting
I-
One more
the
thing.
headphone. We shrunk down the point size on the word "the" and put the headphones on top, and the element of having the headphones but also creating that curve of the silhouette of that style of microphone
Mhm.
just was like, that's it. That's like, that was the design that it was waiting to be
yeah,
the whole time.
because prior to your logo, we were emulating the whole Nick Splat approach and like,
Oh, and you had that illustration of yourself.
yeah. And what I want, any other version of the logo prior to yours was really just kind of too kiddie for its own good. So when people look at the logo now, they think this could work for any show. It has no age connected to it. Like people don't think it's a kid show or whatever, so it works for everyone.
There's nothing cooler than like old fashioned or even contemporary microphones.
Right. Yeah.
And I again, going back to my Sesame Street VHS tapes, the box for the Sesame Street Platinum 25th anniversary tape had like Big Bird and Ernie and Bert and Cookie Monster, and they all had different microphones. Like each one of them was holding a different microphone, and one of them was the style, Matt, that you were just showing, and that was one that was like what we used for Bob's logo. And it's just those sorts of icons have just always stuck with me. And this goes back to what I was saying before with the posters and such, and graphic design in general, is that the more you could lock into a common vocabulary that people already have and what those things symbolize, the quicker you're going to get to something that is affecting to your audience. And so I think, again, that's why, something like Bob's logo, it's so quickly, there it is right there.
Yep. This is a VHS
with
tape,
Grover,
folks.
Grover, Cookie, and Bert and Ernie all have their own.
Yeah.
Each have their own style of microphone.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
So yeah, that kind of stuff just has always stuck with me.
Definitely.
Wonderful.
Definitely. So
do you mind if I stay, or am I?
yeah.
Oh,
yeah, please.
Yeah.
Of course.
to?
Of course.
Yes, you can stay.
Of
Bob's gonna
course.
stay here, and that's what's gonna be.
He's gonna stay here forever.
Oh,
No, he's
brother.
not.
So
It's always got to be about DJ Bob.
I'm such a joy.
yeah, but Bob's been on. He's hopped in interviews.
Couple
I think
times.
a couple times now. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he's helped us get like guests and stuff too. So, and we also occasionally help out with his podcast.
I've been
And
I've
he's
been
also a
working with him.
two-time guest.
Yeah.
Yes, he's a two-time guest.
Now, you also do some video editing and motion graphic work. Can you kind of talk about your work in those fields?
Yeah, those have been. I did a little bit for TEDx Buffalo, and wait, I'm sorry. You said video graphics, and what was the other?
Video editing and
Oh,
motion
video editing.
graphics.
Yeah. That was stuff when I was working for the Diocese of Buffalo for some time. That was one of those things of like, we only have one person on the team who could do it, and Cam, you're it. As I don't really have I mentioned the animatic stuff that I do, and creating those videos. That's one set of skills. That's a bare bones PowerPoint compared to any kind of real video editing. But again, when you're on a small team and someone says, "Hey, we need this," I've had some experience in Adobe After Effects. Never really used Premiere, but I know iMovie like the back of my hand from just doing, puppet stuff from way back in the day when I first got my MacBook Pro. So I'll do things when I need to, and I like to think that I have a decent editorial eye. So yeah, you could find some things that I do, but I'm very grateful to work with video editors. Adam knows a tremendous amount of editing. Matt Bowen, of course, edits all of the Puppeteers video episodes, and my buddy Dave Seifert, who I worked on our 48 film last summer. He and his partner Barack are amazing. So I'll do it in a pinch, but I'm happy to delegate that elsewhere.
Okay, so we have an anonymous question here.
Oh no.
It's a rather odd question, but is scraping ketchup off a burger legitimate?
I'm sorry?
The question is scraping ketchup off a burger legitimate?
Oh, is this from Austin?
Yes, it is from Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So
Who we also just very recently
we
interviewed.
just very recently interviewed him. Yes.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
All right. So that's so funny. So Austin is another dear
Wow.
friend from the O'Neill. We are there are a lot of things that connect the two of us. One of them is the fact that we are tremendously picky eaters, like famously picky eaters. And
Yeah.
And like, I also, if I have a hamburger, if I like am in the mood, I'll do a bacon cheeseburger. I could even be coerced into like having some grilled onion or throw an onion ring on that for some, like if I'm feeling real saucy. My go-to is what my family calls a camburger, which is just a meat and a roll. Or, if I go get a chicken sandwich at Wendy's, which Austin and I do all the time when we are at the O'Neill, it's just the chicken in a bun. So what Austin is referring to with the ketchup is when you go and you order a plain hamburger at a restaurant and they give you a regular burger and you have to like wipe off with the one napkin that they give you all the stuff. But in doing that, like, there's no way to get a perfect like squeegee off of a burger that is textured, to say nothing of the ketchup seeping into the top.
You're always gonna get remnant.
There's always remnants, and it always tastes like tomato, or there's pickle juice, or it's bad news. I am able to tolerate it a little more than Austin can. Like, it's one of those things that if I drive away and then I open my burger and it's got all the stuff on it, it's like, okay, this is a bummer. Austin does the U-turn, but we both feel that it is it is problematic, and it is, just wiping it off does not suffice.
For the record,
I will also say,
for the record, I read this question and was like, "What?"
no, Austin knows me well.
I'm sorry,
Oh
what?
gosh, that's so funny.
When we interviewed Austin and he asked me to ask you that question, he didn't even tell me really the context. So it was like,
no, he did not tell
I
me
mean,
the
sure,
context.
but so now we have a good
Thanks a
idea.
little
So thank you.
context would help.
A writing sample that I did. I had this sketch comedy group that one of the things that I wrote was that idea of pulling away from a drive-through. I think in the sketch it's specifically a Wendy's, and they forget to give us straws in with our bag. So the person driving, I'm like in the back seat in this scenario. We were all playing ourselves or versions of ourselves. And the person driving says like, "Oh, there are straws in the glove compartment," only to find that like they're not Wendy's straws. That's a straw from Target. That's a straw from Starbucks. And that's a straw from like McDonald's or Burger King. And you can't mix them because those straws are designed for those specific cups. So it's literally like a 6-page diatribe on how you can't mix different elements from different fast food joints. And it's, again, it's an old piece of work that I did, but it is one that I stand by. If only because I still feel passionately that you can't mix straws from different fast food places. Come at me, straw Twitter.
So, can you share anything you're currently working on?
Yeah, my day-to-day has me always working on different projects at Damon. There's always new things happening there. If anyone is interested in graphic design or animation or any kind of visual and performing arts, I can't recommend the programs here and the place more wholeheartedly. So feel free, anybody listening, to reach out to me about this fine place. Not a sponsor, but I care for it dearly. I also continue to do illustration. I have a TeePublic store now, so I'm doing all sorts of weird, silly Muppet drawings that you can slap on a t-shirt if you're so interested. I do graphic design with another thing that I do called 10-minute typography, which is on socials. It's just daily graphic design exercises, trying to flex the muscles using fonts and colors and techniques that I don't get to use at my day job. And then we're slowly but surely working on getting Puppeteers back. And in the meantime, there's also I'll say it here because it'll happen. I don't know how long it'll take for it to happen, but we're working on a Puppeteers book. So
nice.
Yeah.
That's
so
amazing.
It'll be a sort of collage of all the different moments, or I shouldn't say all the moments, but from different moments from different people's interviews. So it'll be broken up into different chapters that fit different themes about mentors and getting started, and Jim Henson and people's Puppeteers and all these different things, and be this wonderful. It kind of started because we, at the end of every year, we would put this sort of video message out that was showing people like it was like a highlight reel, and everybody had a little clip. And there's something really beautiful about watching in conversation all the different things that Puppeteers had to say and where the similarities were and where the differences were. So to be able to have a whole book of that sort of celebrates all the people who have given their time and energies to chatting with us, and for listening, I think there's going to be something really valuable about seeing this cross section, seeing these different quotes interact with each other, and really being able for someone to give the time to look at it and read it, as opposed to just kind of passively hearing it, through their speakers.
Right.
So that
Yeah.
is like in the super, super early stages, but
Nice.
I worked with Adam on his Puppetry 101 book at the end of
yeah.
last year,
Nice.
and
Awesome.
it just got us really excited about the opportunities for self-publishing and digital printing and how easy and accessible that was. And it was just too good an idea to not pursue, to kind of help commemorate and put a button on the show that we have given so much time to. If you're even considering it, start making transcripts of your show now, because that's the stage that we're at right now, and it is a grueling process of just getting everything
Oh yeah.
typed up. And I will say we have some great programs that do a lot of the work for us, but when we're talking about silly words and names, and there's 3 or 4 people on the call talking, getting that all correct it's a lot. So
Yeah.
that's why I say I don't know
Yeah.
when this will happen, because it's going to be it'll be good work, but it'll be a lot of work to make
Oh
it
yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, to anyone watching or listening, what would you like to say to those who have kind of supported you throughout your career and who have, well, I guess supported you like throughout your journey?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked this on the show. In familiarizing myself with you guys and knowing what kind of questions you ask, I think it's a really important thing for people to think about the audience that they're talking to, and who we're doing this for. Because while I think a lot of artists think, I would do this even if it was just me, we all do this for the people who are going to take this work in and absorb it and be affected by it. So I just want people to know how grateful we are for taking the time to be with us through everything, through all of the weird and unpolished, and all the ways that we have learned and continued to grow. I'm appreciative of people's patience, and it's also it's something that I have it on a little card up here, but I think it's really important that in everything that we do to be considerate of people's time, because it's not ours to waste. And that goes for, if in working with my coworkers, I ask them to help me out with something, I don't want to take advantage of their time. I don't want, if I'm asking someone to come and talk with us for an hour and a half or longer, I want to be respectful of the fact that we're going to ask them questions that they've never been asked before, and be knowledgeable about their body of work, and to say nothing of then the audience who are going to spend their time listening to that. So the more we could be respectful of others' time, and I think all 4 of you for doing that with me and with everybody, because it takes a lot, and it does not go unnoticed.
If people would like to connect with you, where can people find you?
I'm just about everywhere at Cam Garrity, except for the aforementioned mastodon, pterodactyl, triceratops, saber-toothed tiger, tyrannosaurus. You cannot find me there. But yeah, at Cam Garrity. I'd love if people are interested in wearing some of the really silly, stupid designs that I'm creating over at my TeePublic store, just because it's really inside baseball, some really stupid, funny Muppet stuff. I did a shirt the other day that it's the Hugga Wugga, excuse me, Hugga Wubba Weeba Jamboree. So it's got Ernie dressed up like a farmer from the Honker Duck Eating Jamboree, right?
Yeah.
'Cause that's the
Mhm.
structure.
Yeah.
But then it's got the Hugga Wugga characters from the Ed Sullivan Show. It's got Grover doing the Wubba Wubba,
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
And then Gonzo and the chicken the cow where their horn should be from the Jamboree song on the Muppet Show.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
And like I said, Puppeteers, I hope people continue to watch for those episodes, revisit some old ones. And
Yeah.
Adam and I was just talking with him this afternoon about
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
about scheduling some future interviews to get that back. And
Absolutely. So the last question that either Matt or Marty will take is a question we ask all of our guests at the end.
Go for
Yes.
it, Marty. All right.
Yay,
I haven't asked a question in a while. So of course this podcast is called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show.
Yes.
When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of? Or in your own words, how do you define the word nostalgia?
I think of it. It's funny. There's a quote. I saw this artist, and I'm sorry that I don't remember what their name is, but they had this wonderful quote that I saw at a museum in San Francisco a number of years ago. And the drawing that they had on the wall, it said, "You took me back to my youth, a youth which I miss mightily." And I think that's nostalgia in a nutshell. It's pairing the elements of the past and the things you look back on most fondly, and being able to meet your present self face to face. And some things do that better than others. I think that's the problem with a lot of this is a whole other podcast, guys, but a lot of the reboots and remakes and rehashes and re whatever that we're seeing right now in Hollywood tries and sometimes accomplishes to hit on those bits of nostalgia. There are ways we could do it better. There are ways we could do it more authentically as well. I'll speak for myself. This started in high school, but pretty much every day, every other day, sometimes it's once a week, I go on and look at the new photo section of the Muppet Wiki. Not many people know that I do this, but I'll share it with you guys. And that started,
Of course.
This started when I was really just looking for behind the scenes photos, because a lot of people they put some wonderful behind the scenes pictures on there. There's great reference photos that I talked about before that I was sharing with Adam. But the other thing that it's like my white whale that every once in a while someone will post a little bit of merchandise. Sometimes it'll be a poster, sometimes it'll be a stuffed animal, sometimes it'll be literally recently there was someone uploaded a picture of a toothbrush box, like the box that a toothbrush used to come in, but like right in the sweet spot of like 1994, 1995 Sesame Street. And the rush that just, because you have that image like kind of in your mind's eye, right? But to see like what that actually looked like was just,
It's almost like if you could feel the box when you get
you could
Pretty
feel the
much.
box, you feel like
Yeah.
you're time traveling, and it's just that for that moment of, you took me back to my youth, a youth which I miss mightily. And so for me that's nostalgia.
Well, Cam, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was a blast.
Thank you
Yes,
guys.
thank you.
I
Yes.
I realize I went on a whole I got on my soapbox about respecting people's times, and I'm sorry that I didn't do that. Last month when we were trying to meet. I
Yeah,
had
no, that's okay.
No, no,
That's
work
worries, it happens.
responsibilities,
Totally
but
fine.
I'm so glad that this worked. I appreciate all of the research and homework that you guys did, and it was a blast getting to chat with you. And anytime
Yes,
you
likewise.
want to do it again, you've got my email.
I'm
Yes.
so,
Absolutely.
I'm so proud of
Absolutely.
these guys.
Aw,
I'm
thanks,
so proud of
Bob.
these guys.
Thank you.
Well, to all of our viewers and listeners, this brings another Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode to a close. We absolutely enjoyed our time with
Yes.
Cameron Garrity, and
Yes,
of
yes,
course
thank you.
having
Yes,
DJ
thank
Bob back on too.
Yes, and thank you so much.
Also, be sure to check out Puppeteers wherever you find your favorite podcast.
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much again,
Yes,
Bob,
please
for
do.
helping us
Please
off,
do.
and Cameron, thank you so much for for doing this, and no worries
Absolutely.
about what happened last time. And
Yeah.
thank you so
No
much.
worries.
Thank you guys.
It was
happens.
well worth it.
Yes.
And thank you so much for for what you're doing, and for not just for knowing your work from Puppeteers but everything else. I'm glad for us, not just knowing you, but your work. It's just amazing, and keep up your great work. And can I wait what's next in store for you, especially for the future
Yes.
Puppeteers and
Puppeteer
O'Neill and other
Yeah.
stuff.
later on in the year.
Yeah.
Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you
Well,
guys.
yes.
We'll talk
Well,
soon.
My pleasure.
yes. Bye-bye,
My
Cam.
pleasure.
And as always, what do we say, Jake?
Keep nostalgia alive. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show interview. Be sure to follow Jake and the crew on social media and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.